It's almost been a year since this pandemic started, and we've seen so many people's lives impacted and changed by this pandemic. We can no longer be with family members. We have to remain social distancing, wear a mask, wash our hands, and do all of those things that might protect us from COVID-19. Healthcare workers are affected by this every day and are working on the front lines. Our mental health is impacted. We've seen businesses and local places that were once booming have to close and shut down for good. Worldwide cases of COVID-19 have hit 73.6 million individuals infected, 41.7 million recovered, and 1.64 million have died. Globally, how has childbirth changed and how has childbirth been impacted by this pandemic? But in the midst of all of this, what about birthing people? Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. This birth story starts as a planned vaginal birth with twins. So I want to get right into the story. This birth took place during this pandemic. This could give you some helpful insight as to how that type of birth might go. The birther's name in the story is Hannah. They're 23 from Scotland. They have also given birth 3 times to 4 babies. This birth story is all about birth number 3, the birth of her DCDA twin. So this birther shared with me how they prepared for their birth. It changed drastically right at the end because they had planned for a specific kind of birth to start with. For 35 weeks, this birther had planned for a hands-off vaginal birth with twins. This vaginal delivery was to be a healing birth from a previous traumatic experience. At 35 weeks gestation with the twins, they noticed that they were both in breech position and they had been entirely of the pregnancy. My first instinct was to try for a twin breech vaginal birth, and I started doing research on that. The following week, I had another ultrasound to check their growth, and I decided that it was their last chance to flip around, and that if they didn't, vaginal birth was too risky for all 3 of us. And that's exactly how it went. From that moment, I started to plan the perfect cesarean birth with my fiance, my doula, and my obstetrician. The pandemic greatly impacted my whole experience of pregnancy and birth. The day before of my first ultrasound, Scotland went into lockdown, which meant I had to attend the scan by myself. Discovering that I was pregnant with twins, all on my own, was soul-destroying and completely terrifying. I prepared for the strongest restrictions throughout pregnancy, but we were lucky enough to have some restrictions eased just a month before I gave birth. This meant that I could have my fiance and my doula with me beforehand. My fiance Andrew could be in surgery with me, and he would be able to stay a few hours after the birth in our private room, which we were given because of the twins. Now this birther was 37 weeks and 2 days when they gave birth. They also made it to their cesarean date without spontaneous labor occurring. That was kind of what they planned for with their obstetrician. So their cesarean birth took a total of 3 hours roughly from epidural to close-in. According to a quick Google search, I don't know how accurate this is, but it says on average cesarean births take around 30 to 45 minutes. But of course, if a birther is asleep or put to sleep during that time, it could take some time in recovery to actually wake up, and maybe this birth process was difficult, so we'll get into that. The birth itself was a completely new experience to me because it was a cesarean, not greatly because of COVID. When my first daughter was born, all of the grandparents were allowed to visit. When my second daughter was born, again, all of the grandparents came to visit, and my eldest got to meet her baby sister in the hospital just a day old. This time, Andrew was allowed to be with me in the private room between the hours of 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. One other named visitor could come for an hour, but the slot had to be booked in advance, and Andrew would have to leave. So each evening, he and my mom would switch places so that she could come see me and the other babies for around an hour before visiting was over. They gave us some insight as to what the postpartum period looked like during this time and during the pandemic. The girls never got to meet the twins until I was discharged at home 5 days after they were born. No friends are allowed to come to the house and hold the babies, so it's been much more calm and relaxed this time around. We've had my mom living with us, and the other 3 grandparents and parents have visited in our time. It's been great not having a house full of friends. who only want to hold babies and be waited on by me while I recover from something so huge. The pandemic has been fantastic in this area. Finally, they said, I understand that some areas of the UK and the rest of the world, pregnant and birthing families aren't as lucky as we have been with the restrictions easing. Every pregnant person has the right to be supported by a chosen adult throughout their pregnancy and appointments, and every birthing person has the right to have at least one birthing partner throughout labor and childbirth. This shouldn't exclude doulas, as we are not birthing partners. Being in America, where restrictions in hospitals are heavily advised, I guess, or mandated, I don't really know what the word is for that, it's scary to be giving birth right now. I feel like there's been a lot more resistance and fight around here in the US, and it's interesting to just compare different places and what they're doing during this pandemic. A lot of folks are needing to give birth maybe unsupported or with limited support, or not even have their doula there, which is really difficult for the doula and the birthing person. I think in our last video I kind of talked about that a little bit. I understand that most mandates are put in place just to keep the public safe, because a lot of the public isn't doing that on their own to begin with, but I feel like doulas are essential to healthcare and meeting those needs. I feel that they're important and they should be in the birth room. They should be allowed. There should be no hoops that they have to jump through to get there. And I hope as this pandemic goes on, or hopefully comes to an end, we can see more doulas in our hospitals and supporting birthing people, whatever that looks like for them. At the end of the day, I just want people to be safe and happy and healthy during this pandemic, and those are a few things that have actually been hard. We can't control how others react in certain situations, obviously, and just keeping yourself healthy mentally and physically can be challenging under these circumstances. I just worry a lot about birth right now and how this pandemic could possibly impact birthing people and babies being born. It's a concern for me because I worry about birth trauma and I worry about the support that people are getting, especially during the postpartum period. That's a huge time where I feel really bad, and I can't imagine needing to isolate myself, obviously for safety reasons, and isolating my baby. I just can't imagine doing that. Already feeling isolated as a mother. This is just a really difficult time for everyone. I know we're so tired of hearing that. I hope that Hannah feels some closure with her birth experience from her previous traumatic birth. It's really difficult to heal from a traumatic birth, and sometimes giving birth again doesn't necessarily help that or take that away. Sometimes it takes years to heal from a traumatic birth experience. So I'm thinking of you, Hannah. I really appreciate you for sharing your story with me. Happy holidays, and please just be kind to one another. If you have a birth story that you would like to share, leave a comment down below. Let me know what your experience has been like during this pandemic. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you'd like, and I'll see you next time.